I hate live-action remakes. 99% of the time, they suck and are the bottom of the barrel when it comes to modern Disney. Their most recent film, Lilo and Stitch, is a massive testament to how lost they are as a studio. It's crazy because I actually had, for some reason, cautious optimism going into this film. But no, it was bad. Very bad. Ohana doesn't mean family. It means nothing! Seriously, I don't want to hear about health insurance and child protective services in a Disney film. Thank you very much. For those who don't know, I'm a childless millennial animation fan, aka
Loser! You're a loser! Are you feeling sorry for yourself?
I typically watch movies the way God intended. Alone, crying, and with a bottle of Jack Daniels with a silly straw. For Lilo and Stitch, I changed things up and watched this movie with my good friend and his family. I thought, I can finally see how parents and kids react to these films. The results? Well, most of the kids in the theater were bored out of their mind, walking around, kicking their feet, talking over the movie. It was eye-opening to say the least. So, why the hell did this movie make nearly $800 million at the box office? Well, there's the nostalgia aspect. But honestly, there aren't a lot of options for family movies out there right now. But marketing really is everything. And Disney threw their weight behind Lilo and Stitch. That is why it has done so well. Hell, that's why the remake of How to Train Your Dragon will do well for DreamWorks too. It's an established IP that already has succeeded. And that alone was able to scare Pixar with Elio, which they moved back by a week. Got folks right now going like, wait, Elio, what the hell's that? Is there a new Pixar film this summer? Yeah, there is. Ever heard of it? Probably not. Again, marketing is everything. Now, these remakes are just escapes for most families, and that's okay. Families, more often than not, are not movie critics. They're just people trying to enjoy an evening with their kids. I don't blame families, but I do blame Disney for realizing how little they have to try as a company. I realize now that fighting against live-action remakes is a lost cause, and Disney will continue to print money along with other companies who are now jumping on the trend. So that begs the question, how did we get to this awful point? Why are these movies usually so bad? And what does the future hold? And besides some topical reviews, consider this my last video entry on the subject. Because after years of complaining, I'm tired, and I don't see things changing for the better. So yeah, you win, Disney. Congratulations. And it sucks even more, because I think a live-action Treasure Planet or Atlantis could actually work. But no! Instead, we're getting Moana, starring The Rock. God have mercy on us. But before we start, I want to give a big shout out to our patrons on Patreon and to our YouTube members. Last month was rough, very rough, but y'all had our backs and it really helped us to pay our team. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for your support. We also have some new perks on the horizon, so stay tuned. Also, a big shout out to this video sponsor, Raycon. Summertime means summer vibes, and that means more traveling and more adventures. And who better than Raycon to help you play the soundtrack to your life? No one, I say. That's because Raycon is still one of the leading contenders of premium audio in the area of earbuds. Raycon's everyday earbuds are the perfect summer accessory that are meant to join you throughout your fun summer days. And their latest model is their best model yet, sporting features such as active noise cancellation at a price point that is half of that of the competition. Included with that is 32 hours of battery life and a carrying case that can quick charge in 10 minutes for 90 minutes of playback time. So you are covered if you forgot to charge before heading out to your flight. I use my Raycon every day for practically everything. Chores around the house, yard work, going to the gym, walking my dogs. By the way, I have a new dog. His name is Finnegan, and he is so cowardly. What a scared little boy. These everyday earbuds continue to serve me well, and I'm certain that they will do wonders for anyone looking for a premium audio solution that won't break the bank. So head on over to buyraycon.com/Saberspark to get 15% off Raycon's best-selling everyday earbuds. Doing so helps support our work and also gets you some pretty damn awesome earbuds too. Thank you again, Raycon, for sponsoring this video. And now, back to the video. Okay, so how did we get to this point? Why do these remakes typically suck so much and lack any creative backbone? Well, historically, Disney has had a live-action division in their film productions since Treasure Island, which was released in 1950. Some of these live-action features were animation hybrids, like Mary Poppins and Pete's Dragon, with many of them acting as a buffer between new animated features. Back in the day, Disney also did theatrical re-releases of their animated classics roughly every 7 years. This was way before home releases for DVDs or videos existed, and they would stagger them apart, filling in the gaps waiting for their bigger films to be released. Yes, we used to be a country. This eventually led to the early 1990s, with Disney trying out something new by creating live-action remakes of their own films. The first of these movies was one of my personal favorites, Homeward Bound. Crazy, right? Homeward Bound was actually a remake of Disney's 1963 film, The Incredible Journey. And yeah, that last scene in Homeward Bound still gets me to this day. But this time, it took place in California, not Canada. The characters had voiceover dubbing by Hollywood actors, and substantially better working conditions for the animals, thank God. And the box office return for Homeward Bound was solid too, making $57 million internationally with a sequel on the way. Not a bad return for their first try. But the potential of making even more money got them thinking even bigger. So, the next logical step for Disney was to try doing live-action versions of their animated films. The first one released was Kipling's The Jungle Book, released on Christmas 1994. In it, they aged up Mowgli, had him going on thrilling adventures in the Indian jungle, and even gave him an English girlfriend. Right, well, I can't do the British voice. Right, where's my tuna potato?
You put some cold-ass tuna on top of some hot-ass beans. Bruh. And we supposed to like that? We supposed to think that's good? Fuck no.
Their early ventures into live-action remakes usually involved properties deemed less sacred to Disney as a brand, so they could experiment and expand on some things that the originals didn't touch on as much. The 1994 Jungle Book was incredibly different from the 1967 animated film. But some critics appreciated the risk Disney took with it. Jungle Book 94 broke even at the box office. But the movie was not the runaway hit Disney was hoping for, making $70 million against a $30 million budget. We have to factor in marketing as well. Their next movie, however, would be able to draw in more kids. They knew they needed more animals, more physical comedy, and more merchandising opportunities. With that, Disney released 101 Dalmatians on November 27, 1996, starring Glenn Close as the film's fashion-crazed villain, Cruella de Vil.
Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? You are.
Now, this one I genuinely liked. Glenn Close is amazingly over the top as Cruella, but they also expanded on the human characters to make them feel more like real people. The most notable difference in this one from the original was that the animals did not talk. Most of their acting was done with real dogs intercut with animatronics and CGI used for stunt scenes. Dalmatians was a certified hit, making $320 million against a $70 million budget. It also set a new expectation for them as a company. If they could do that well with a lesser-known title like Dalmatians, wouldn't they logically make a fortune by remaking their most popular movies? At the time, the technology available made a lot of their more creatively ambitious titles impossible to film. So, Disney would have to be patient as the use of CGI animation rapidly evolved in the early 2000s. Look what you did, Lord of the Rings. This is your fault.
Hold out your hand, Frodo. It's quite cool.
Then, after a 10-year lull, Disney came out swinging in 2010 by pivoting their approach to live-action remakes. The real brainchild behind this push for the remakes was a Disney executive named Sean Bailey, the president of Walt Disney's Motion Picture Production Division. His approach to reimagining classic animated Disney films was simple, copying the Marvel movie formula, but adding Disney characters to it instead. As quoted in an article, Bailey explained, quote, We thought if Iron Man and Thor and Captain America are Marvel superheroes, then maybe Alice, Cinderella, Mowgli, and Belle are our superheroes, and Cruella and Maleficent are our supervillains. Maybe if there's a way to reconnect with that affinity for what those characters mean to people in a way that gets the best talent and uses the best technology, that could become something really exciting. It feels very Disney, playing to the competitive advantages of this label." End quote. Well, yeah, that's a weird way of saying just throw money at it and see what happens. But okay, bet, let's see what you got. The budgets would increase. They had high-profile directors like Tim Burton and Guy Ritchie to draw in adult fans. Technology had finally caught up for them to start exploiting the 3D trend at the movies. And their first big release utilizing these tactics was Alice in Wonderland, directed by Tim Burton and released on March 5th, 2010. It had a notably high budget of $175 million, but it was a monster hit, grossing over $1 billion worldwide. Holy shit, $1 billion? God, I forgot about that. That's a lot of money. Yeah, we were screwed at the start, weren't we? But I have to admit, I have to say it, I kind of liked the film. I did. It wasn't perfect, but it was different in interesting ways. Though I gotta say that live-action Tweedledee and Tweedledum still give me nightmares.
Oh, it's good, but it's nothing like my mother's ham biscuit brickle-brackle and beans with fizzy wiggets.
But the important thing here is that Disney finally found a live-action formula that worked. And they put a ton of money in capitalizing on it to avoid becoming culturally irrelevant. Disney became so predictable with structuring the remakes that you can usually guess what direction they're going in based on the subject matter or the title. A. They address a piece of criticism about the original movie, but never the clearly important one that people actually care about. Offensive stereotypes, censorship, etc. B. An origin story for a hero or villain, which usually makes them less interesting. C. Girl boss rises to power because people keep calling them sexist. Yeah, get it, Snow White. D. A shot-for-shot remake because fans will yell at them online if they change too much. And E. Who cares how bad it is? Just have it out by Christmas. Now, there have been a lot of YouTube channels popping up specifically to combat Disney's incorporation of PC propaganda and to how they market many of their live-action remakes and TV shows. And I want to be upfront on this issue. As much as I hate these movies, I don't just hate them for desperately trying to shoehorn in weird messages. Yeah, it's obvious, it's insincere and annoying. But I mostly hate the live-action remakes for just being awful. Plain and simple. That they're pandering films that cheapen the legacy of the movies they're based off of. Disney is so dependent on the iconic visuals from those original films that they feature direct recreations of them in the trailers to lure people in. Because, look, it's your childhood, remember it? Remember when you saw these movies for the first time? Remember being happy? It's the same movie, but this time, it's somehow completely unwatchable. The core issue is that these days, corporate Disney is a huge casino with a high-stakes gambling problem that is actively destroying them from the inside out. They've stopped trying to take creative risk and just rummage through their own back catalog, looking for stale ideas and slapping a fresh coat of paint on it. It's gross, manipulative, and highly disrespectful to the artists who made those films great in the first place.
Turn it off!
Disney's nostalgia factor gives them a competitive advantage. But live-action remakes are now spreading to other studios. Because hey, if Disney can get away with putting in less effort and still make their money back, other studios like DreamWorks absolutely will too. Despite how much Disney has chosen to devalue what forged their legacy, animation is not some inferior form of art. These movies were conceived as animated films. So much of their appeal, their character design, their shot composition, just everything about the creative process of these films are meant to be animated films. Nothing is gained in these live-action versions, except for a second payday for Disney. but so much appeal is lost. Let's talk about appeal, because it's not just a word I'm using to talk about art style. It's an actual element of animation. Appeal in animation refers to the overall attractiveness and likability of a character or object on screen. It's about designing and animating elements in a way that brings them to life, connects with viewers, and adds a sense of charisma or charm. This applies to people, animals, and even ordinary objects like a rug or a toaster, and how they can have appeal and their own unique personalities just based on how they're designed. This critical element is completely watered down when trying to adapt the same stories to make a more realistic aesthetic. Let's contrast this with the character in Lion King 2019 and the live-action Beauty and the Beast. Compared to their original 2D counterparts, the entire appeal of these character designs have been completely removed to make them photorealistic CGI characters that mimic real animals. It erases everything that was appealing about these characters and these movies to begin with. Another element completely removed from the live-action remakes is shape language. Essentially, it's the idea that the shape of a character or object can convey certain attributes or feelings to the audience, even before any movement or dialogue takes place. For example, a character with sharp, jagged shapes might be seen as aggressive or threatening, while a character with soft, round shapes might be perceived as gentle or friendly. You can't replicate this in live action because normal humans aren't built that way. These characters were intentionally designed to have their physical shape contort to a visual language, one that's been developed through the history of animation to convey information about that person subtextually. Real humans don't work like that. Maui from Moana is the perfect example of shape language. He's a humanoid character, but his body is completely exaggerated as visual shorthand for his personality. He's buff, imposing, and sturdy, with his body language demonstrating confidence to the point of arrogance. The way Maui looks reinforces who he is. You are not going to get the same thing out of casting The Rock because he's The Rock. It speaks to a fundamental misunderstanding, or just a lack of shits to give, about why these films are so beloved. The designs they're adapting weren't created to be believable. They were created to have the same visual language and appeal that makes animation such a unique art form. And these remakes throw all of that away.
Hello, Aladdin. Nice to have you on the show. Can we call you Al, or maybe just Din? Or how about Laddie? Sounds like, here, boy. Come on, Laddie.
I said, oh, great. Excuse me, boy, where's your boss?
The name Disney was synonymous with high-quality animation for decades, but now it is much lower on their priority checklist. To me, the Disney live-action remakes have only gotten any level of success because there's an unfair bias against animated movies as strictly being made for kids. That adults can't even like animated films, even if they're well made with detailed animation, an interesting story, and catchy music. Because as an adult, you're too grown up for animation. And if you admit to still liking an animated movie as an adult, well, that means you're a baby too.
Sorry guys, that was the president calling. And he just told me that owning this toy is now the only proof you're not a baby.
Now obviously, I think that this is an incredibly reductive and ironically immature take. But yeah, some people believe that. Never mind the fact that many people who say they don't like animation will also admit that a Pixar movie made them cry. That is a massive double standard to me. The visual medium of a film really should not matter at all, because good stories always find an audience. Marvel and Star Wars films are completely dependent on CGI animation for visual effects and world building. We're just so used to seeing it that people take it for granted and completely forget about it. As long as it's well done enough, they get a pass because their CGI is rendered in a lifelike way. No matter how imaginative or unrealistic the stories and characters are. But now, Disney is completely focused on trying to persuade adult viewers to check out their remake movies if they appear to be live action on the surface. But it's clearly not a deliberate tactic to pander to viewers to only view animation as kid stuff. Instead, it's a new twist on an old Disney favorite. That's stupid! These remakes rely on the continuation of the whole twisted perspective in the West that animation is for children or not real movies. These movies are clearly nostalgia bait. That's the whole point. They're banking on a recognizable brand name to draw people in who remember it. It's less about art and more about reinforcing the brand. Like, I personally never hear anybody talk about them aside from seeing outrage bait online. Not like I would know anybody in particular who'd do that. Wait, who's that in the mirror? Is that me? But these people are older now, usually in their mid-30s to early 40s. And some even have their own kids. And so many of them believe that they're too old to watch animated films now. Disney does not try to break that stereotype by remaking animated films as new animated films. Instead, they take the easy way out and bastardize the original stories by removing the critical reason they work so well in the first place. Because if it ain't broke, spend $200 million to fix it anyway. Who cares if the critics hate it? It still makes a shit ton of money.
Ugh, Stan, knock it off. But it's just crap. No, they're penguins. Stop it.
It's Jim Carrey in whatever, you'll pay to go see it. Fuck you. July 12th.
That clip was exactly how I felt watching the trailer for the How to Train Your Dragon remake. Every scene was a one-for-one shot-for-shot recreation of the original movie. It's the clearest example of how pointless and fundamentally disrespectful these things are. They aren't movies. They're visual parasites that cannot exist without leeching off nostalgia. There's nothing challenging here, with no new ideas being presented. It's just the same, safe, predictable, and non-threatening garbage they scooped up from the bottom of the barrel. Any edge they previously had has been sanded down, and it's now an hour longer. And they still expect people to pay them to see it. And as angry as I am, I want to be clear that there are a lot of talented people that work at major studios who still care about animation as a medium. And I absolutely do not want the production crews to lose their job. It's not their fault the movies suck. They're doing what they were hired to do, and almost certainly aren't getting paid enough to do it. Disney as a company is so bloated by corporate expansion that the execs don't value animation in the same way that Walt did because they don't have to. Walt cared so much about the craftsmanship behind their animated movies that there were full TV segments about the creation of the films, celebrating the artists who made them.
This is Frank Thomas, one of our key animators. He's making the drawings that will animate part of the dialogue scene we have just heard recorded. He's not just making faces in the mirror for fun. He's mouthing the words as he hears them. Then he sketches the position of his mouth so that the character he's drawing will appear to be saying the words.
By flipping these drawings at the same time that we play the record on the playback machine, we get a pretty fair idea of what we're going to see on the screen. I'll show you.
What's a baby? What's a baby?
And here's Jock, the little Scotty.
I'm very, very soft.
The animation industry has changed so much since then that I cannot imagine anything like that happening now. And I know that sounds pretty bleak, but unfortunately, I think it's true, at least for Disney. So, where do I think things are going to go from here? Well, that seems a little more unclear. The budgets keep growing, but the huge returns they got used to with The Lion King 2019 or Aladdin aren't a surefire thing anymore. They're still getting made, obviously, just not by the same person at the helm. Sean Bailey left his position on February 26, 2024. After 15 years working on the live-action remakes, he was replaced by Fox Searchlight co-president David Greenbaum. Now, Sean will still be involved with producing Tron, Eris, that's how you say it. There's another Tron movie, by the way. He'll be involved in that before leaving the company entirely. But the destructive impact of what the remakes have done to the pop culture landscape is undeniable. Many of the most highly regarded Disney classics already have their live-action remakes hosted on Disney Plus, or are currently in production. Remember the Dumbo remake? Nobody remembers that. Why was it made? And unless they have more colossal failures like Snow White on their hands, I don't see this trend dying down anytime soon. Prioritizing keeping the IP alive over making actual quality art is going to keep us in a race to the bottom when it comes to the creation of good, meaningful art, especially when it's actively working against animation. This is similar to how they run their theme parks or merch. It's less about art and more about reminding people of the brand. Like, does anyone really remember these remakes other than the fact that they happened? Or is it just that studios know they can use these IPs to make a lot of money and then move on? I personally never hear anybody talk about them aside from seeing outrage bait online after a new trailer drops. People somehow still go to see them, they make boatloads of cash, and then are immediately forgotten about forever. Then 4 years later, there's a ton of unsold DVDs in the movie bins at Walmart because nobody wants them. And those copies are gonna stay there because they're all on streaming services anyway. It's one thing to make a bad movie, but to willingly ruin a brand's legacy for a quick payday? That is beyond embarrassing, and they should be shamed for it. Just because a studio insists on living in the past doesn't mean we have to allow them to make the future of movies that much worse. Every time we talk about Disney remakes, I'm reminded of an interview with Gendy Tartakovsky. The interviewer asked him when he was going to move on from animation and get into real filmmaking. Gendy was obviously massively offended by this statement. It boggles the mind how the premier nature in animation apparently has the same perspective on a medium they did so much to pioneer and popularize. And that's really the core issue with these films. They're offensive to every artist involved and to everyone that loves animation as a medium of creativity. If there ever was a soulless production, it would, without a doubt, be live-action remakes. At this point, I don't see them ever going away. They are just too financially successful, and families love them. From the brand deposits to the unrivaled power of nostalgia, live-action remakes will just continue to grow worse and more common. A live-action Despicable Me? Well, get Steve Carell on the phone. A live-action Shrek? Hey, Mike Myers, want a paycheck? A live-action Ice Age? Who can say? But it really does feel like a race to the bottom. If there's nothing else to be learned from all of this, it is to keep supporting original animation because it needs us more than ever to survive. There are still people out there doing the good fight, and they need our help. But hey, those are just my overall thoughts. What do you all think? Tell me down below in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time. Also, it's good to be back. Thanks again, folks. Love ya.